after his name. He has written a number of books, and the whole purpose of this is to whoever's playing their piano, please turn it off. Mercy. Can we please mute everybody but me and Al? I would think by this point everybody would know. Okay, so we're trying to talk about evangelism because we realize that people are asking questions. They're asking questions about how to live. And if they're in certain places like New York, they're asking questions about what's life going to be like on the other side. And so we thought this would be a good time to talk about evangelism. Al has done last week and this week. Next week will be Howard Brown. The week after that is Hal Farnsworth. The week after that, we believe will be Alex Valencia, and so we're hoping that that will be solidified by May 21st. So Al, without any further ado, take it away. Al, hello.
Hey, Barry Allen Garofolo here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can hear me, Dave.
I can hear you. I need everybody else to mute themselves.
Okay.
Audio and video.
Thank you, Dave. Dave is the leader of Bent Tree Ministries, a wonderful ministry. I hope you will look them up. And I just want to say thank you to the M&A, Mission to North America, and the PCA for inviting me into this, and very sweet, and just a wonderful group of people. I especially like the hearts of those that I've been able to work with here. So I want to jump into this topic. Let me begin with something I began with last week, and that is I want to write the 4 values of the Evangelize Today ministry. And what that means is, where do I pivot from? And so the 4 values that the Evangelize Today ministry pivots from are these. The first one is shifting from listening to reply to listening to hear. In other words, most of us have grown up in an evangelism of a truthing, telling, presenting way of sharing faith. And something changed under our feet where we are now in a research, introspection, discovery cycle of history. One of the things that's interesting is Jesus asked questions 40 more times than he gave answers. The second thing that is important to understand is I believe we have re-entered the age of the parish. We are now in a life cycle where 85% of the population is not coming into our structures, and there's no indication that they will. It's taken us several decades to understand we're just reshuffling the same church people over and over again. And we built the minister in our seminaries and our systems for a brick and mortar ministry, and now we've re-entered the age of the parish. I don't like the illustration that I'm going to use, but it's the best one I've got. It's the difference between caged chickens and free-range chickens. And we are now in a free-range culture. And can we build a new way of thinking for our ministers to make discoveries? The third value is a research, introspection, discovery, metric of sharing the gospel. We are now in the age of fake news. People only believe what they discover. What is interesting is the image of God, we find, loves to be researched. In fact, let me tease with this. I believe the image of God has gotten so desperate to talk. It's writing on its wrapper in permanent ink. And I completely missed it for 55 years. And the fourth value is love. Evangelism is love. And love is something that people experience and can measure. And these are the four values that I work from. So let me get on to our slide. And here we go. Dave, can you see my tattoos telling the secrets of the soul?
Yes.
Okay. So I get invited to about 20 tattoo conventions a year. It's crazy. As a speaker or a vendor, selling books or setting up a booth. This was one of the tattoo conventions I was in Washington, D.C. And this little gal came up and she did her master's thesis at Savannah School of Art in tattoos. And she asked me to coach her through that. So here is our book. And if you notice, there's a study guide on it, right? So this is how this optic opened up. We built a large building and it filled up with church people from all the struggling churches around us. This was about 7 years ago. And I remember I was in the pulpit that very first Sunday and I said, I'm done. Because we had just recollected other people's church people. And I didn't know what to do. My call had left me. And so I do what all ministers do. I went to a blues bar. And what I didn't know is I was on a journey. And to make a long story short is when that space became my parish, an optic opened up and I saw tattoos for the first time. I didn't care that I didn't care about tattoos. And I asked a lady that was sitting at the counter who was full of tattoos, a very professional lady, by the way. I said, does your tattoos have a story? And for 3 hours, she poured out all her secrets. And I said, how did I miss this? How did I get to be 55 years old and miss one of the most profound spiritual movements right in front of me? And so went and did 1,000 tattoo interviews all over the country and spent 3 months in tattoo studios and wrote the book. So this book, I was in a very, very conservative church in Iowa. And I put this up on the screen of the sanctuary, and the matriarch, she was 92 years old, stood up and said, you are not putting that up on our wall. By the way, when you're 92 years old, you get to do whatever you want, okay? And so she went and stomped out. There was 300 people in the room, and she went and stomped out. And I said, hang on, Mabel. And she goes, no. And I said, do any of your grandchildren have tattoos? And she spun around and said, every one of them. And I said, could you interview one? And she said, no. And she slammed the door and it echoed through the sanctuary. That's how I started that conference. And all the people were all looking at me like, what are you going to do now? Well, she was the first one in the church the next Sunday morning because I was preaching at the church. And I said, Mabel, did you do your homework? And she said, yes. And I said, what'd you find? And she interviewed her 22-year-old grandson who she found out a whole story of his life she never knew about, including he had a tattoo about her. She went and bought 10 books and did the study guide with 10 little blue-haired ladies. and they all interviewed their grandchildren each week. So that was a fun experience. This is a typical tattoo convention. Are they the Wild Wild West? They sure are. For some reason, in this life cycle in history, in other words, something's happening right in front of us. But because we tend to have building brain, and what building brain is every idea, every dollar, every imagination, every plan leads into our buildings, that we miss this. And tattoos tend not to fit in religious structures very well. But for some reason in this life cycle in history, the soul was writing its stories and secrets on the live canvas of the skin. This was a fellow that was in Desert Storm. He had a brain injury. This is the battle that he got a brain injury in and lost one of his buddies. Some people get a tattoo a month rather than take Prozac. It enlivens the morphins. And they're writing it in permanent ink. Don't you know what that's going to look like when you're 75 years old? It's really not a relevant question to the tattoo community, including if the tattoo changes shape, they know what it is. So people go to a tattoo convention for a number of reasons. And by the way, there are about 500 tattoo conventions worldwide every year. And people come to shop for their artists, to shop for a certain kind of art, to get connected, to see if they can get encouragement. You have every form of family coming through, including the whole family unit. And they're putting strollers and pushing their children in strollers through. The person is writing to strangers. One of the most prevalent tattoos right now is a face tattoo. I met with a whole bunch of people that had face tattoos down in Tampa, Florida. You will look at me. You will look at me. Even if you look at me with disgust, you will look at me. They're writing to friends and family, including marking friends and families they never had, but were hoping will come and form. The inside is writing to the owner of the tattoo. Is the image of God sending a message to the owner of the tattoo? In many cases, I'm there now. And to God, whoever that might be, we find this in our evangelism ministry. This is something that we discovered. The longer someone talks, the more they talk themselves towards God. In Western evangelism, it's us doing all the talking, right? We found this as well, that the longer someone tattoos, the more they tattoo themselves towards God. Now, this picture I have up is one of the many fun things that has happened to me. The Alaskan Atheist Society brought me up to teach on tattoos. I know those words don't fit in the same sentence. And about 50 atheists in Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska, and I came in and taught on tattoos. Well, there were 2 Harley dealerships and they wanted me to do book signings, and I met people from the Church of God. And they brought me into their church and they introduced me as a tattoo prophet. And I said, there's no such thing as a tattoo prophet. They said, go with it. And they brought about 100 people on stage to lay hands on me for being a tattoo prophet. My comment to them was, I'm a Presbyterian. I don't like to be touched. Hurry up. So I went to a tattoo dealership, Harley dealership. All the Church of God people showed up, all the atheists showed up, and the Hells Angels in Anchorage showed up, and this woman was part of the Hells Angel gang. If you look on her, every one of her tattoos is an anger against religion. On her arm is the snake and the apple. There's a Bible on fire. She pulled up her pant leg, and she's burning down a church from her ankle to her thigh. There's this idea. You protest too much, right? But she stayed in touch with me, including telling me what other tattoos that she is putting on herself. After 1,000 tattoo interviews, we're up to about 8,000 now, because we now have a number of people doing interviews with us. We've got about 20 residents that are now interviewing tattoos. We've discovered the inside is writing on the outside. How did I miss this? It was right in front of me. A hidden language in plain view. I used to think the skull was just to be creepy or Halloween-like or shocking. And at the heart of the tattoo industry, the skull means core. It is neither black nor white. It is timeless. It means the core of who you are. Many ask, what are tattoos? Why don't people understand my tattoos? Is it a phenomenon or a movement? I will say this, a movement picks up trajectory, but like my 1970 disco wear, it just petered out. We don't see that yet with tattoos. It's picking up speed. It's reinventing, taking on even more technology. Even grandma is now getting tattoos. A lot more are coming. And the question is, why?
Hey, Al, when do you want us to break out?
Let me do 2 more slides and then we'll break out.
Okay, thank you.
Let me get this out of the way. Leviticus 19:28, it says, don't put a tattoo on your body. By the way, this is your average tattoo family man. He's running out of skin. He's starting to pierce. The little boy is asking, Daddy, when will I get those on my skin? Leviticus 19 also says, don't wear mixed clothing, threads, and don't cut your beard in a certain way. And the core of this passage is about ancestral worship. In other words, don't mark your body and worship your ancestors. I can't tell you how many times I get this passage in my emails a week. The first edition was called God and Tattoos. Why are people writing on themselves? But we changed it to Tattoos Telling the Secrets of the Soul, because we found that was a little truer to the message of the culture. Dave, I'm ready for a breakout.
All right, Karen, take us there.
Okay, we're taking care of it. May take a little bit of time.
Al, are you there?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yep. Start us off.
By the way, it is my job to create more questions than answers. So if that's happening to you, I feel successful. After this hour, we're going to have another hour of question and answer time if you want to stay on. But also at 9 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow, I'm going to be on the web. And if you go to evangelizetoday.info, which is our website, evangelizetoday.info, there's a link for another Q&A time if you want to join us. So let me jump back in. Chapter 1 of the book is the canvas of the soul. If you can imagine a painting on a wall by a famous artist turning into a human body, crawling down the wall, and then out into the marketplace of life, we are there. Every culture has its artists, and a significant portion of those artists have now chosen the live canvas of the skin as their canvas for their lives. Many people think tattoo artists are just this back alley thing. Some of the best artists of our age, and many of them are making anywhere from $20 to $1 million a year doing tattoos. And the only thing that prevents them from doing them more is having to sleep. And so the canvas that the soul has chosen to write its message on is the skin in this time and space. So when we have a tattoo story hunters booth, and we have about one a week around the country right now, a number of churches are doing it, they're getting a banner, or they're just doing it themselves. It's a confessional booth. It's whatever is going on the inside is coming on the outside. So we've got a number of theologians here, and I want to give you a construct to think in. It's okay to agree or disagree with me, but I want to give you a construct to put tattoos in. Over here, we have something called the Catholic Church. It has something called a confessional booth in it. It's inside a building. They have a celibate guy listening. It's really fallen out of disuse right now. A few people use that, okay? But historically, that confessional booth has had a huge imprint on the history of Christianity. Over here, you have the Protestant church who still have this protest muscle, this get it right, and really drives the truthing, telling, presenting. And so it's a Protestant or protest muscle. In the absence of the role of the confessor, someone who listens and hears and holds, tattoos have exploded. The inside has gotten so desperate to talk, it's writing on its wrapper in permanent ink. This is one of my tattoo artist friends. When you see a young man in particular, he's in his early 20s, he's cocky, not as much as me. He gets to write permanently on people's skin. But when I meet him when he's 40 and 50, he's much darker because he's been listening to the secrets of the soul for 20 and 30 years. And the culture has gone to him to tell their secrets, not to the religious people. This is big. If you get nothing else out of this time, suburbia took away tombstones and cemeteries to build houses and malls and golf courses. The tattoo community invented the new cemetery right in front of us, and I completely missed it. The #1 tattoo is a memorial for someone who died, either consciously or subconsciously. My generation said granite headstone. The tattoo generation said, that makes no sense. Nobody goes to those places. The tattoo community invented the new cemetery right in front of us, and I completely missed it. This fella came up to me. This was at the Pittsburgh Tattoo Convention, and I was a speaker there. Can you see why I'm nice to my tattoo friends? So he just came up, and many people at a tattoo convention come up and they just stare at me, and I've learned to give them space. We'll have a big sign up that says, does your tattoo have a story? And they're introspecting, and they're in that tug and pull as to whether they're going to share. By the way, this is a tattoo, I think. Don't even ask me. Please ask me. And it's, I think the inside, or what we call the image of God, is wondering whether it should decoy the questioner. So this guy came up and I said, I like your tattoos. And he was on his honeymoon 6 months prior to this. And he was on his motorcycle and his bride was on her motorcycle. And a truck came and ran over her and killed her. This is the memorial of her on his back. This was at the Sturgis bike rally, and this guy put a whole cemetery on his back where all his Vietnam buddies are being memorialized. As they die, he marks them. And he had Agent Orange, so he had struggle communicating this to me. If you see this picture, this is my brother who died, and the lady behind it is, this is my son who died. In other words, the question, does your tattoo have a story, ignites an emotion that is sacred. And if I could say one thing to you, it is this: tattoos are sacred. They're special. They're secrets. We don't rush up on them. And tattoos tend to have a knowledge as to whether we're being judgmental about them. Tattoos are poetry. Simon and Garfunkel's song, The Sound of Silence, says the words of the prophets are written on the subway wall. Philosophy of life. They're sending the message this way and this way. They're in circular reason. They're in linear reason. Tattoos are trying out lyrics and songs and philosophies in all different ways. People are hunting for who they connect with in a tattoo convention, which is what this is. So this is one of my bar peeps, and she had breast cancer, and she put a lion on there. I'd like to say something. You will see men with flaming skulls and swords and chains and cannons going off, and you're like, whoa. Here is one of the impulses, a weaponization. You can't shame me anymore. I've been to hell and back. What else you got? I like it when you look away. I have power that I don't have. For you theologians, I'd like to say something. There is a shocking correlation between tattoos and the armor of God in Ephesians 6. They tend to be protecting the same things. I hope to get a resident one day that will study with me and study that phenomenon.
Hi, Al. I think we may need to have another breakout room soon.
Very good. I'm ready.
Okay. We
You're on now.
Okay. Can you see tattoos show her beauty?
Yes.
By the way, I think there are about 10 Evangelize Today residents on this screen, and the tattoo interviews that they are doing is just remarkable, remarkable. We've had a number of them go on Facebook in quarantine and said, look, can you help me out with tattoo interviews? And we had one resident that had 20 hits. 20 people wanted him to interview them because he went out on his Facebook. And these guys are just wonderful researchers. So chapter 5 is tattoos show her beauty. You know, with my wife and my daughter and my friends, who is more obsessed with beauty than a woman? You know, a little tiny thing, or an eyelash or makeup. Who is more obsessed with beauty than a woman? Well, that person's God. God is obsessed with beauty. And she is using tattoos to tell the story of her beauty, including you'll see a lot of angel wings, about innocence. You'll see that I am still beautiful because of my body shape or my wounds, and the tattoos are talking about her beauty. I am strong. I am beautiful. This is how I'm designed. So she, in this time and space, is arting herself. And God created creators, right? So I sat with this little gal for 2 hours in a convention. And I walked up and I said, I'm a tattoo researcher, and I gave them my card, and I have a business card, and our other residents do too. And they were like, okay, that's a little creepy. But they let me sit for 2 hours. And at the end of 2 hours, she put her hand on her tattoo and said, I think this is the memorial to my 2-year-old that I lost. And so in 2 hours, this artist only did half of a flower. As you can, all the time she spent trying to figure out what she was memorializing. And she realized when someone was listening that this was a tombstone to her little girl. Tattoos are totems. You know?
Al,
Yes, sir.
can everybody turn their video off so that we don't burn up the bandwidth, and because you keep coming in and out?
Okay.
Everybody needs to mute their video.
So mute your video. Okay. So tattoos are totems. You want to know what's on the inside? Write it on the wrapper. I'm a, you know, and this comes off the Native American, that you're a grizzly because you're fierce in battle, or you're an eagle because you can see far. Well, in this time and space where personhood is now at contest, am I male? Am I female? Am I, you know, am I a math person? Am I an athlete? Am I an artist? People are writing on their wrapper, including, if I write it on there, I'll become this. And we are now in a contest of personhood in the culture. The new shaman. So I was in a tattoo studio, and the little gal who was about 28 came in, and the guy artist was about 50. And they let me sit. I have many studios that let me just sit and watch. And he said to her, what would you like me to ink on you? And she said, you know. So she handed to him the complete permission to write whatever he felt he wanted to on her. So I was up in Phoenixville, Maryland, and there were 4 churches all out of business. They all had a tattoo studio next to them. One of them had a tattoo studio in the shutdown church. Guess where the new confessional booth is? It's the tattoo artist's chair. Grandma's getting tattoos. You want to know what somebody's recovering from or the addiction they're heading into? Learn to read their tattoos. This fella is in my bar. Every inch of him is covered in a tattoo below his wrists and neck, including between his toes. And it's much about survivor's guilt from the Vietnam War. He was the only one that lived, and did he earn it? And he wakes up in a nightmare every night in the battle. His tattoos tell the battle. By the way, when you go to an AA meeting, Alcoholics Anonymous, and for sobriety, they give you a chip. Guess what the new chip is? It's a tattoo. You knew I was going to get here. Did God write on Jesus' skin? By the way, this little gal, the millennials come up to me at these tattoo conventions and they lean on me. You know, I still think I'm this young stud that's strong and virile. They see me as an older father that they can come lean on. She came and leaned on me, and I'd push her back into the crowd and she'd walk around and lean on me again. And I said, if you're going to stand here, you're going to work for me. And this is how she sold books. When people walk by, she said, you're buying this. And she sold 50 books. So I want her to come with me. So the question, did God write on Jesus' skin? Because skin tends to be an important messenger in the scriptures. So I'm not building a tower here. You know, every once in a while I'll have a snarky day where I've gotten Leviticus 19 too many times, and I'll send him Revelation 19. And wouldn't it be just like Jesus to come back with a tattoo? But again, the way I'm holding this verse is not, this is, you know, a proof of a tattoo. There's something interesting here, as it is here.
Al,
That skins matters. Yes.
it's actually almost time to go into Q&A.
Okay. Give me 2 more slides. Oh,
Okay.
all right. The Francis Schaeffer Institute has brought me in. We look for book signings in colleges and homes and churches. Those always go very well. We have interns. RUF has brought me in. Study guide. Okay. Are we coming back one more time, or is this it?
This is actually Q&A time. We are at 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Almost. So if you wanted to say a few more things, we could definitely do that.
So you're going to give me 1 more minute?
I think you could have another minute, perhaps to introduce your Q&A.
Okay. We went to Sturgis Bike Rally. We brought 10 ministers, and this is the biggest motorcycle rally in the world. And what could go wrong, right? And we just wanted to see what would happen. And we set up a booth and we were mobbed. And we did something like 250 or 300 tattoo interviews that week. And if you didn't cry the first day, you cried the second day of people telling you the stories. I'm in the middle, by the way. I'm not the guy. This guy came at me pretty hard, and then he became my friend. We're on tattoostoryhunters.com and Facebook, Tattoo Story Hunters. We're getting invited overseas. I don't know how to monetize this yet, but conventions from over the seas are inviting me to come. We do a cigar night. There we go. Okay, Tracy.
Just before you go, I want to let everyone know that for the Q&A, I am going to stop recording this. So you guys will have some privacy for the Q&A.
So this is the second hour we're going into.
Yes, we're almost at 3 o'clock.
Okay, very good. It's been a delight to be with you guys. Stay on for the next hour, or sign up on evangelizetoday.info for an hour Friday morning at 9 o'clock. There's a fee for that, but some people we'll have a smaller group at that.